What if Goku trained Deku? Chapter 16. Goku was frantically flying over the city, desperately searching for Uraraka's energy signature. Damn it, why can't I find you? Hold on, that might work, thought Goku. Goku closed his eyes, and for a second flashed into Super Saiyan 3. Deku looked in Goku's direction on the train, but didn't do anything else. Meanwhile, in a shadowy bar, Uraraka was tied to a chair, next to an unconscious Bakugo. She sat terrified, but then she felt the flash of ki. She smiled as she flashed her own ki. Like a light through the darkness, Goku zeroed in on the power, instantly flying to the location. He stood on the roof, feeling the ki of the people inside. He called up All Might. All Might, I found them, said Goku. Goku told All Might the location. Can you get them out? Asked All Might. I don't think so. There is someone directly behind them. If I teleport in there, they might be able to hurt them before I can stop them, said Goku. Okay, stay there. We will mobilize and come to you. If you see a chance, get them out early. If not, stay put, said All Might. Okay, said Goku. Goku hung up, then called to Vegeta. Vegeta, I found them. Come to me, said Goku. Vegeta had been searching in the other direction, flew over to Goku. We could just go in and get them, said Vegeta. We can't be sure they will be safe. Don't worry. If somebody feels like they're about to hurt them, I'll blow off the top floor, said Goku. Vegeta nodded. How long then? Asked Vegeta. All Might said soon, said Goku. A few minutes later, the police and the heroes came around the corner. There we go, said Goku. All Might looked onto the roof, seeing Vegeta and Goku, and shot them a thumbs up. Police radioed the other heroes at the Nomu factory. Meanwhile, Deku and the group were right next to the Nomu factory. Deku closed his eyes, feeling for ki. They aren't here, but something is, said Deku. Deku pointed through the window to the back corner. Kirishima looked and saw tanks full of Nomu. The two shivered, seeing the horrific creatures. What now? Asked Deku. As Deku said that, Mount Lady kicked her way into the building. What the hell was that? Asked Kirishima. They looked through the window to see the heroes rapidly restraining the Nomus. Meanwhile, across the city, the raid had begun there. All Might smashed through the wall, followed by Goku, Vegeta and the other heroes. Don't worry, students. Hope has arrived, because we are here, said All Might. And immediately, Edgeshot and Gran Torino knocked out Kurogiri and Darby. Shigaraki, where is your master? Asked All Might. Suddenly, the members of the League and the students were covered in silver slime. Acting quickly, Goku and Vegeta shot forward, grabbing Uraraka and Bakugo. However, they vanished from their grasp. A few moments earlier, at the Nomu factory. I think we got them all, said Gangorka. Something moved in the shadows. Best Genius immediately shot his gene strands at the figure restraining him. Identify yourself immediately, said Best Genius. You've done well, heroes. You've earned my respect. But I'm not interested in you, said All For One. All For One stepped forward, breaking the strands on him. He stepped into the light, revealing his face. He was a handsome man, with a cruel smile etched across his face, and cold white hair. Goodbye, said All For One. All For One raised his hand, firing a massive energy blast at the heroes. Instantly, the entire building exploded. Deku and his friends covered their heads, praying that they would survive. When the dust had settled, the wall they were hiding behind was barely standing. The same could be said for the students behind it. All of them felt as if their heart was about to fall out of their mouth. A few moments later, there was a loud crash and lots of coughing. Deku looked around the corner and his heart skipped a beat. There, standing only a few meters from him, was Bakugo and Uraraka. Deku immediately powered up to full power and got ready to grab him, but Ida grabbed him. Don't, said Ida weakly. I can't just stand here, said Deku. Uraraka took a quick glance over at the wall. She had sensed the spike in energy. Don't do anything stupid, Deku, thought Uraraka. Uraraka grabbed Bakugo and took off at max speed. Oh no you don't, said All For One. All For One activated his tentacles and grabbed Uraraka's ankle, flicking Bakugo and her back down to the ground. Deku gritted his teeth. He couldn't watch this. Tomura, it's time for you and your friends to leave the battleground. Take these children with you and get out of here, said All For One. Shigaraki went to protest, but when he saw the intensity on his master's face, he backed down. All For One used Kurogiri's quirk to open a portal. We're about to have some very interesting company, said All For One. All For One grinned, then shot off the ground. The earth splintered and cracked under the force. High in the air, there was a massive collision. Like two supersonic jets, All Might and One For One smashed into each other. So, you have come to kill me once again, All Might, said All For One. All For One brought his fist straight into All Might's face, sending him crashing down to earth. All For One floated back down to the earth, slowly clapping. Very impressive, All Might. That big dramatic entrance and all that training, and for what? Back in the dirt like the worm you are, said All For One. All Might staggered to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. That wasn't a quirk. That was brute strength. What the? Said All Might. Are you a bit confused? Said All For One. All For One held out his hand. Slowly a red light grew in the palm of his hand, but it wasn't his quirk. A dark red key orb rose out of his palm. No way, said All Might. That's right, All Might. I watched every second of your training. You see, once I got my new and improved body, I found that I had lots of free time, and when I discovered that you had started training under Goku, I was interested. Every lesson you learned, I learned, and with my quirk, Skill Learn, I could master things that you took hours in minutes. All For One shot forward, landing a massive kick in All Might's chest, launching him back. I originally took this quirk to help me learn how to use my new powers. Oh, if only I had known back then how useful it would have been to me, said All For One. All For One formed a massive ki blast and fired at All Might. It smashed into his shoulder and then detonated. The blast was massive. Buildings were flattened and hurricane-force winds slashed at the city. Oh, this is unreal. No quirk could compare to this, said All For One. The smoke cleared, and there standing in the centre of the rubble was All Might. Good. I didn't want this to be over so quickly, said All For One. The two mighty warriors shot towards each other. Meanwhile, Deku and friends were still hidden behind the crumbling wall, watching Uraraka and Bakugo fight the League of Villains. I need to go help, said Deku. Deku went to take a step out, but at that moment, All Might's massive body came crashing past him. He slammed into the ground with a thud, but quickly got back to his feet. All For One rocketed over, smashing a ki blast into All Might's face. This is quite a pathetic showing, All Might. I'm not even trying, said All For One. All For One laughed and fired several ki blasts at him. You know, All Might, you did some good tonight. You managed to save your successor's life, said All For One. Deku and All Might's eyes went wide. You see, I was about to vaporize him when you arrived. If you were even a second slower, there would be no more One For All. I don't know what you're talking about, said All Might. Oh really, said All For One. Not All Might. All For One shot a small ki blast behind him, destroying the wall in front of Deku. All For One smiled, then shot over, grabbing Deku by the throat. He then slowly flew over to All Might and threw the choking boy at the symbol of peace. Oh, Izuku Midoriya, how pathetic. But you do have my respect. You managed to defeat Muscular, and you had the stupidity to come here tonight, said All For One. All Might caught Deku and put him on the ground. I'm sorry, I couldn't leave them, said Deku. Don't worry, we will talk about this later. Now, get out of here and take those two with you. Deku flew over to Uraraka and Bakugo. We gotta get away, said Deku. Deku, you idiot, what are you doing here, said Bakugo. Deku didn't respond. Instead, he grabbed Bakugo and Uraraka and took off at max speed. He needed to get them away from here. However, just as soon as he thought he was clear, Deku was smacked down to earth by a massive punch. I never said you could leave. No. You may have escaped death before, but you die tonight, little Deku, said All For One. Uraraka and Bakugo shot massive blast at the villain, but he didn't even flinch. All For One's grinning face appeared through the smoke. With another hit, he sent Bakio down to the ground, then reached out forward, grabbing Uraraka by the throat. Suddenly, All Might shot towards the villain, but was quickly deflected by a gigantic air blast and ki blast combination. Don't interrupt, All Might. All Might tightened his grip around Uraraka's throat, slowly cutting off her air supply. Are you watching, Deku? What about you, All Might? Said All For One. Deku looked up groggy. His vision was blurry from the last hit. Maybe you need a closer look, said All For One. All For One rocketed back down, grabbing Deku by the head and slamming the couple into the ground. All For One held Deku's head, forcing him to watch as he slowly applied more and more pressure to Uraraka's neck. A cruel smile spread across his lips as the two tried to escape his hold. Deku powered up, 20%, 50%. For a second he even flashed into 100%, but he still couldn't move. So strong, said Deku. Desperately, Uraraka struggled, her punches landing but doing nothing to the smiling villain. Slowly, each hit grew weaker and weaker until she could barely hold her hand up. No, please, said Deku. Deku screamed, powering up even more. He didn't care about what happened to himself, but even with that, he couldn't do anything. How can I still be this weak? Asked Deku. All For One smiled, applying more and more pressure. Let go of them, said Vegeta. Vegeta grabbed hold of All For One's shoulder, gripping it tightly. The villain tilted his head, looking at the prince. You must be Vegeta, said All For One. Vegeta flashed into Super Saiyan 2 and held out his hand. If you can really sense energy, then you should be groveling right now. Last warning, let them go, said Vegeta. All For One let go of Deku and Uraraka, turning to face the Saiyan Prince. Oh Vegeta, that won't work on me. Yes, your power is terrifying, but I know the rules. Yes, I heard them when you told All Might. What was it again? Oh yes, if you or Goku get involved in the affairs of another universe, this dimension and yours will be erased. Is that about right? Asked All For One. Vegeta's hand shook slightly, and All For One's smile grew even bigger. Now, back to something more important than you, said All For One. All For One turned and saw that Deku and Uraraka were gone. Meanwhile, a block over, Goku teleported in and put Deku and Uraraka on the ground, along with Bakugo. I'm glad I managed to get you guys out of there, said Goku. Deku immediately grabbed Uraraka, pulling her into his arms. Uraraka was coughing and rubbing her neck when she felt tears running down her neck. She looked down at Deku and saw him crying like crazy. Deku wiped his face. I'm sorry, I was just so terrified of losing you, said Deku. The two hugged, holding each other so tightly. I need to go. There are people who need evacuating, said Goku. We can help, said Deku. No, you need to get as far away from this battle as possible, said Goku. Deku nodded. Goku teleported away, appearing next to All Might. You alright? Asked Goku. Yes, I am. Did you get the kids out? Asked All Might. Don't worry, they are safe, said Goku. 20 meters away, All For One landed, facing the duo. Come on, All Might. Give me the fight I deserve, said All For One. I'll handle the evacuation, so you don't have to worry about holding back, said Goku. All Might smiled. That's good to hear, said All Might. Goku teleported away as All Might screamed, powering up. Impressive, All Might. You completely dwarf Midoriya 100%, and even yourself in your prime. But the same can be said for myself, said All For One. All For One's cruel smile spread across his face. Let's end this once and for all, said All For One. The two titans of strength shot towards each other. Just from the insane speed, buildings shook around the city. All Might came in for a massive Detroit smash, but All For One dodged it, smashing All Might in the face. All Might was thrown back, and All For One flew after him. The villain grabbed him by the throat, dragging him at incredibly high speed along the ground. The two tore down the street too fast for people to see, smashing straight through buildings after buildings. Still holding All Might by the neck, All Might flew high into the sky, holding the hero. All For One held All Might at arm's length, but slowly pulled him closer. "Don't worry, I'll let you say goodbye to your successor," said All For One. All Might's barely open eyes widened as All For One blasted him in the gut. All Might tore through the sky like a meteor, crashing hard into the pavement in front of Deku and Uraraka. What is even happening? It's all too fast to see. Wait, down there! Look, it's All Might! Everyone, the villain has just blasted All Might all the way across the city, and All Might's not getting up, said a news presenter. Deku rushed towards All Might, but All Might held out his hand to stop him. Panting, All Might staggered to his feet, blood pouring down All Might's face from a cut above his forehead. "I'll be okay, young man. Please do not worry," said All Might. "Oh, don't let your final words be a lie now, All Might," said All For One. All For One slammed into the ground behind All Might. The ground shook with the force. All Might spun around, trying to hit the villain, but All For One was faster. With a swift kick, All Might was sent hurtling down the street. All For One turned to face Deku and Uraraka, and the same cruel smile returned. "Ah, another successor to kill," said All For One. Deku powered up, smashing the villain in the face, but he didn't even flinch. "How weak," said All For One. The villain grabbed Deku's arm, crushing the bone. Deku screamed but didn't give up. He shot a ki blast straight into All For One's eyes. For just a second, the villain loosened his grip, letting Deku escape. "Clever," said All For One. The two children took off at max speed, desperately trying to escape. "Oh, I won't let you escape," said All For One. All For One held out his hand, charging a ki blast. Just before he fired it, a massive fist smashed into the side of his face. All For One smashed along the pavement and through a building. "Ah, finally, All Might. You finally used it," said All For One. Everyone across the world stared at All Might. Down the street, as Goku was teleporting civilians away, he stopped for a second, turning to look at All Might's direction. "I hope you're sure, All Might," said Goku. All Might clenched his fist, wiping the blood from his mouth. Then he suddenly began powering up. His normal aura slowly became a deep red colour. All Might's already massive muscles bulged. All Might yelled, screaming up to the sky. "Kaio-ken!" yelled All Might. Like a missile, All Might shot down the street. The pavement behind him melted from the insane strength. The mighty hero's fist smashed straight into All For One, sending him flying through dozens of buildings. All Might rocketed after him, delivering massive punch after massive punch to the villain's smug face. All Might yelled, pulling back a gigantic blow, but before he could land it, All For One fired a blast straight into All Might's stomach. All Might was blasted high into the sky. Far away, Goku, Vegeta, and a massive bunch of civilians stared up at the bright light in the sky. Goku put down the entire building he was carrying and turned to Vegeta. "I'm glad we got the last people out in time," said Goku. Vegeta nodded, sitting down. The two mighty Saiyan warriors were exhausted from having to move hundreds of thousands of people. People began leaving the building and joined the massive crowd. "What's going on? Why are we out here?" asked the civilian. Vegeta stood up, facing the civilian. "All Might is currently fighting an incredibly powerful villain. If you were all still in the city, we would be dead long ago," said Vegeta. As Vegeta said that, there was a massive explosion behind him. The group turned, facing the flash. "Quick, Vegeta, shield!" said Goku. Goku and Vegeta put out their ki in front of them, creating a shield in front of the crowd. Seconds later, a massive shockwave smashed into it. The cliff beside them smashed apart like a house in a hurricane. "What was that?" asked Vegeta. "All For One powered up," said Goku. Back in the city, All For One stood in a massive crater. Smoke bellowed from the burning city around him. All Might watched high in the sky. "He's so strong. Even with Kaio-ken, he's stronger," said All Might. All Might clenched his fist, powering up further. His scream could be heard for miles around. Down on the ground, All For One smiled a cold smile. "Kaio-ken times 3! Yelled All Might. All Might tore down from the sky. His speed was so insane that the air itself began to ignite around him. All around the world, people watched what looked like a meteor rocket towards the ground. All Might pulled back his fist as the sleeve of his costume tore and ignited from the speed. All For One's smile faltered for a second as he put up his arms to guard. All Might's massive fist smashed into the villain's arms. All For One's arms were thrown backward, and All Might came in for another massive punch. This one smashed into the villain's face. All For One hurtled backwards, smashing into another building. All Might chased after him. As he flew, All Might gathered all of his energy into his fist. "Oh, All Might, this has been fun," said All For One. All Might came in for one final gigantic punch. Using every drop of power he had, the mighty hero swung his fist. The force of the impact flattened dozens of buildings in the area. However, when the smoke cleared, everyone knew it wasn't enough. There, with a sickening smile on his face, stood All For One, and in his hand he gripped All Might's fist. All Might's eyes went wide. He tried to pull his hand free, but All For One's grip was too tight. Slowly, All For One leaned forward, whispering something that made All Might feel sick. "Kaio-ken," said All For One. All For One was wrapped in a dark red aura. Far away, Uraraka, Goku, Deku and Vegeta all looked over in shock. "His ki just doubled," said Deku. How does he know it too?" said Goku. All Might dug in his feet, using all his strength to pull his hand free. The villain's smile grew as he released the hero's hand. All Might staggered back, but before he could counterattack, All For One appeared in front of him, shooting a massive punch into his stomach. All Might was sent hurtling back, smashing through dozens of buildings. All For One flew over, landing a small distance away. "How do you know the Kaio-ken?" said All Might. "Remember what I said? Every lesson you learned, I learned too," said All For One. All Might gulped. "Anyway, this fight is at its finish. Can feel it, All Might. The small flicker of power you had when you entered this battle is seconds from going out. It's because you overused the Kaio-ken, isn't it? You could have been a mighty symbol of peace for an extra month if you didn't fight. Don't worry, I'll make sure that your little successor won't have to live with your death for very long," said All For One. All For One cupped his hand and began charging a ki blast. "Here it is, All Might. The death you deserve. Ka-me-ha-me." All Might stood panting. He was almost completely out of energy. "No," said All Might. "Did you say something?" asked All For One. All Might clenched his fist. "No, I will not die. I am this country's symbol of peace," said All Might. All Might dug in his feet and cupped his hands. "I refuse to die until I finished training young Midoriya." All For One smiled. "Yes, this is perfect. One last stand against me." The two massive titans of strength charged their attacks, the blue and the red light illuminating the devastated city. "Ah!" yelled both All Might and All For One at the same time. The two massive beams smashed into each other. The buildings that had somehow managed to stay upright were flattened from the shockwave. Immediately, All For One's blast began to push back All Might's. Within seconds, the towering red wave was ready to crush All Might. All across the world, people watched with bated breath. All Might's feet slowly began to slip. "I'm sorry, young Midoriya. I wasn't strong enough," said All Might. "Then how about I lend you a hand?" said Deku. All Might's eyes snapped open. He looked to his left to see Deku smiling up at him. "What are you doing here?" asked All Might. "I couldn't just watch you die," said Deku. "Neither could I," said Uraraka. All Might looked to his right to see Uraraka smiling up at him. All Might smiled. "If we make it out of here, we both have detention," said All Might. Deku and Uraraka powered up and put their hands on All Might's back, giving him all of their energy. "Let's make it out of here first," said Deku. All Might's body was flooded with energy. The tiny flame of One For All burst into a towering inferno. Slowly, All Might's blast began to push back All For One's attack. Oh, this is perfect. Now I don't need to find Midoriya. Very poetic. Master and pupil dying together, said All For One. All For One activated Kaio-ken, pushing the attack back towards All Might. Don't worry, I can give you more, said Deku. Deku powered up, all the way to 100%. Kaio-ken, yelled All Might. The two beams pressed harder up against each other, but neither one seemed to be winning. You've done well, Toshi. Let us help. All Might looked to his left, seeing Nana Shimura with her hand on Deku's shoulder. Behind her was another predecessor. All Might looked to his right, and the same was true there. Another predecessor with her hand on Uraraku's shoulder. All of the previous holders. Thank you, said All Might. A tear rolled down All Might's cheek. Goodbye, All For One, said All Might. All together, everyone began to yell, unleashing all of their energy. United! Kamehameha! Yelled All Might. The massive blast surged forward, destroying All For One's blast and ploughing straight into him. No, impossible! Yelled All For One. The beam exploded, throwing everyone to the ground. For a moment, everything was still, then All Might began to get up. Looking around, he couldn't see the previous holders anymore. All Might walked forward, through the smoke and the ash, and found All For One's unconscious body. All Might smiled, raising his fist in victory. All across the world, people breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, Deku woke up in hospital. His arm was in a cast, and he had a killer headache. In the bed beside him sat All Might, and in the chair in front of him slept Uraraka. Deku smiled, seeing that she was safe. Welcome back, said All Might. When did I fall asleep? Said Deku. After the beam exploded. Apparently used too much energy, said All Might. Deku laughed. I guess that means you won, said Deku. No, we won. I couldn't have done it without either of you, said All Might. Deku smiled. Thank you, Master, said All Might. What did you say? Asked Deku. I know it sounds crazy, but in the final moments of the battle, it felt as if all the previous holders of One For All were fighting alongside us. I think I even saw them, said All Might. I think I felt that too, said Deku. The two smiled. End of chapter 16.